Okay, this is David Cashman with SEB Housing. This is the information session for the affordable units at Watermills in Watertown. It's October 6th at just about 6 p.m. and we'll get started here in just a minute. Again, this is the information session for Watermills in Watertown. Just make sure everyone can hear me okay. We may have some households joining by conference call. We don't have any yet, but if we do, I'll loop them in as well. I'll be speaking to both audiences. And if not, just the folks on YouTube. I should say that if you have any questions throughout this information session, feel free to type them in the box underneath where you see the can everyone hear me okay, which I just typed. So if anytime you have a question, type it in. I'll try and pause what I'm doing, answer the question. If it's something that I'm going to get to later in the presentation, I may ask you to hold off because it may be something that makes sense to get to a little bit later on. Otherwise, I will answer your question when I see it. And again, feel free to pose your questions at any time. This session is for your benefit. And so I want to make sure that any questions you have get answered. Can everyone hear me? No one's responded. Someone just give me a okay or yes, we can hear you. Okay, well, we're going to get started. So this is the information session for Watermills in Watertown, located at 330 Pleasant Street. This is the information session for the affordable units in Watermills. And the purpose of tonight is to give households a synopsis of what this opportunity is, how to apply, and what to expect going forward. I'm not going to cover every single detail of the program. That would take far too long, but I will try and cover the most salient points that I think would be helpful for people watching this to know. And if there are questions that applicants have now or going forward as they begin the application process or down the road, we, SEB Housing, will be involved through the process. And we can answer those questions as they arise. Sometimes you don't know what your questions are until you move further on in the process, obviously. So if you have questions later on, that's fine. You can get in touch with us. Our contact information is on various of the materials, the information packet, the ad, the application. You can email us. You can call us. If you do call, make sure to leave a message. We don't always answer, but we will get back to you within about 1 to 2 business days. You can submit materials by email, you can fax them, you can drop them off. We have a 24-hour secure lockbox right outside of our office door in Needham. So whatever works best for you. And probably the most important thing to take away from this evening in some respects is if you think you're interested, submit an application by the deadline, which is November 3rd. So you still have time, and unlike a lot of lotteries we run, you actually don't need to submit income and asset documentation with your lottery application, which means that the lottery application should be a lot faster and easier because you don't have to provide all of that supporting documentation. As I'll discuss through this presentation, if later on you do have the opportunity to move forward, you will have to provide that documentation that buttresses or supports what you put in your application. But for purposes of just getting into the lottery, you don't have to provide all of that, which will certainly make the process of applying a lot easier. Already we have 35 applicants in the lottery, and we're about halfway through from when marketing started to the application deadline, which is November 3rd. So I do expect we'll have a healthy number of households in the lottery. So Watertown Watermills. In total, there will be 99 units in this development 15 of which will be made available through this process. We don't need to get in too much detail about kind of how these units get permitted, but suffice to say, Watertown is pretty active as far as cities and towns go in trying to make sure that there are affordable units in new developments there. And so through the permitting process of this development, there was agreement made to have 15 of the units be affordable. One of the nice things about this program is that those affordable units have been pre-selected and approved by both Watertown and by the state. And they've been approved to make sure that the affordable units are sort of equal to the market rate units in terms of you can't determine an affordable unit from the exterior. You can't walk down the hall and say that's a market rate unit and that's an affordable unit. They all look the same. They all have very nice features. They're scattered throughout the development, so it's not as if the affordable units are all stacked on top of one another or all in one corner of the building or in the least desirable part. They're not all the smallest units, and they come in a variety of bedroom sizes. So there's been some thought put in here, and there's been some oversight to make sure that the affordable units are sort of representative of the units as a whole, and evenly dispersed throughout the building and not identifiable as affordable units to someone passing by. I understand this is all brand new construction. The units will have a lot of natural light, in-unit washer and dryer, so that's great. You don't have to go somewhere to do your laundry. Plank flooring, stainless steel appliances, designer kitchens with granite countertops, so very nice. Central air. The units are pet friendly, so for households who have a pet, there may be some restrictions on breed and size and number. I don't know exactly what those will be, but you can inquire with the leasing office if and when moving forward. There are elevators in the building, bike storage, a gym, among other features. So beautiful brand new development, great opportunity, and an opportunity to rent units through this program at a price that's significantly less than it would be in the market, on the market. As far as the breakdown, so Watertown always has income tiers of affordability. Some of the units are available to households making up to 65% of the area median income, and some of the units are available to households making up to 80% of the area median income. You don't need to get bogged down in what area median income is, but just for purposes of kind of general background, the federal government, HUD, publishes area median incomes each year, usually in April. And they publish them for all the cities and towns throughout Massachusetts. And so the income limits, which we'll talk about soon, are based off of those numbers that are published by HUD. And also the rents are based off of the income limits. So 5 of the 15 affordable units are 1-bedroom units with 1 bathroom, and the income limit is 65% of the area median income. So if you make over 65% of the area median income, you would make too much for those 5 1-bedroom units. And we'll talk, I'll give you the specifics on those income limits in a minute. The rents for those 5 1-bedroom 65% units are $1,470 per month. There are also a total of 10 units that are available to households making up to 80% of the area median income, and those are broken down by 1-bedrooms, 2-bedrooms, and 3-bedrooms. There are 3 1-bedroom, 1-bath units for $1,731 a month. There are 6 2-bedroom units. Some have 1 bath, some have 2. At 80%, the rent for those is $1,908 a month. And there is 1 3-bedroom unit with 2 baths. The rent for that unit is $2,085 per month. Tenants in this program are responsible for paying the rent each month. If you have a voucher, you may be able to use that. But generally the way that this program works is tenants are expected and required to be able to support the rent on the strength of their own income and assets, or because they have a voucher that it's mobile and can be used at this property. The rents are not tied to any particular applicant's specific income and financial circumstances. So those rents that I quoted, and you don't have to memorize those are in the info packet, they're in the ad, they're in the application, you can find them on our website. So those rents don't change. You know, if you're, let's say, if you think you qualify for a 65% unit, but your income is actually quite a bit under 65%, what that number is, and we'll talk about that in a minute. That doesn't mean that your rent would go down as a function of what your particular income is. That rent of $1,470 for the 5 one-bedroom units at 65%, that's the rent, whether you're right up against that 65% income limit, or whether you make $5,000 less than that, or $10,000 less than that, or whatever the case may be. The rent doesn't change. In addition, that rent doesn't include utilities, so tenants will be responsible for paying gas, which includes heating and electricity. Cooking is electric, and hot water is electric, and also for their water bills. Those will be separately metered. Sewer charges are included in the rent. So what are some of the eligibility requirements for this program? So the first is households have to have income and assets that qualify. And we'll talk in a minute about what those are. Probably shouldn't come as a huge surprise that if this is an affordable program, rents are below what they would be on the market rate. There is an income. Do we have a household that's joined on the conference call?
Yes.
Hello, this is Dave from SEB Housing. We've been started for about 15 minutes now. We have some households who've joined by YouTube, but I'll be talking to both audiences. If you have a question, just shout it out, and I will answer it. Okay?
Thank you.
You got it. So we're just talking about some of the general requirements around this program, and I was saying that there are income and asset limits. In order to qualify, households will have to be under those limits, and we'll talk about what those are in a moment. There will be priority given through the lottery for based on household size and composition. That's not so much of a requirement as it is for entry into the program, as it is a requirement for priority in terms of how the waiting lists are generated when we run the lottery, which in turn will dictate the order in which households will get to move forward. Households cannot own a home upon move-in. It's okay if you own it now. It's okay even if you own it at the time of the lottery, but it will have to be sold before you can sign a lease. And finally, and this one doesn't come up too often, but occasionally it does, households and their families can't have a financial interest in the development. To the extent it comes up, and again, it doesn't come up often, sometimes someone actually may be working for the management team or the developer. And usually that happens further down the road, like they're working for the management team, and then they find out about this opportunity, and then they want to apply. That's not allowed. It's not something we see come up with any real regularity going into the lottery. Additionally, just a minute or so ago, I was talking about the breakdown of the 15 affordable units, and I should mention that 3 of the units will be built out for persons with mobility impairments. So households that are, do have mobility impairments will get priority for those 3 units that are built out with those features. Okay, so income limits. This is gross income, and income includes everyone, not net income. Okay, this is gross income. And it's everyone who's going to be living in the unit, everyone who's on the lease. So it's the entire family household composition. There are 2 exceptions. Minor dependents, so under the age of 18, we do not count any income that they may make. I should add the caveat that that is income from a job. So if you have a 16-year-old kid who's going to be moving into the unit with you and they have a side job and they make $5,000 a year, we don't count that. On the other hand, if you have a kid who's 16 years old and they're going to be moving into the unit with you and they receive $5,000 a year from a trust or something, so not a work related, that would count towards the income limit. Additionally, the second exception is dependents who are full-time students. Any income that they have above $480 in a year is not counted. So even if they make $5,000, only $480 would count towards the income limit. So I won't run through every single income limit. It's all in the informational materials. You can just look at the charts and, probably be hard to memorize right now anyway, but it's in the ad, it's in the info pack, it's in the application, so you can just check in. But what you should recognize is that the income limits are based on the number of persons in your household. So it's not tied to the number of bedrooms that you're applying for. So for example, for the 65% units for a household size of 1, they can make up to $58,240. For the 80% units, a household size of 1 can make up to $67,400. Now, when you step back and think about that, that means that whether you're a 1-person household or a 2-person household, if you are going to be renting a 1-bedroom unit, you'll be paying the same rent. Okay, so in that way, in theory, the 1-bedroom may actually be slightly more affordable to a household size of 2, assuming that they make, very near that income limit, right? Because they can make a little bit more, but they pay the same rent. Okay, and the same theory would apply for the 2-bedroom units and the 3-bedroom units. The income limits are tied to the number of people in your household. The rents are strictly based on the number of bedrooms. For a household, and then I won't go through the 2-person, 3-person, 4-person, 5-person, but just to give you a sense of kind of what the spread is. So for 65% AMI units, for a household size of 1, like I said, they can make a little over $58,000. A household size of 6 can make up to $96,460. So almost $40,000 more. For the 80% units, household size of 1, like I said, can make up to $67,400. Household size of 6 can make up to $111,650. So pretty good spread. Like I said, income, we have the 2 exceptions for dependents, I should say minors under the age of 18. Any income they get from a job not counted, and then the full-time students who are dependents only count $480, and it's gross income. I should also add that in this program, income is counted rather expansively. The most common way, perhaps, that a lot of people think about income is they think about their primary job and what their salary or hourly rate may be, and kind of extrapolate from there, and that's their income. And that may be the case. For plenty of people, it is. But also, there are plenty of other people, especially in today's economy, who may have side gigs, who may have a side job that they do. They may be self-employed, doing a little work on the side, selling things, or whatever the case may be. And if they have income from that, that would also be included. But there are other sources of income as well, and we list a lot of them in the application. Income is obviously very kind of particular to each applicant, but just going through some of the other sources of income that do come up that may be a little less frequent. If someone is divorced and receiving child support or alimony, those are sources of income. If someone is receiving Social Security checks, that's income. Or SSDI, that is income. If they have a pension where they're getting regular disbursements, that is income. Unemployment compensation and workman's compensation, all income. If you get periodic and regular recurring gifts of money from a family member or a friend, and this happens sometimes, that's income. Now that one's a little bit kind of unique. It depends how often it is. If it's kind of once in every one, if it's once in every once in a very long while, a couple times a year, probably not recurring enough to count. But if it's once every week or once every 2 weeks, then that most likely would count. Also, if you have assets that generate income, maybe you have, a CD savings account that generates interest income. Usually they don't generate a lot, but they can generate some. That income would get added to your maximum income limits. So when you fill out the application, be thoughtful about all sources of income that you may have. Please make sure to fill out the income chart or table in the application with some care, so that you get all those sources in there and you don't miss one. And the reason for that, which we'll talk about in more detail later, is there are going to be different waiting lists for the different units at different tiers. So what do I mean by that? Well, if you're a household size of 1 and you put on your application that you make $50,000, then you would be eligible for a 65% unit, most likely, at least as far as the income limits are concerned. You may or may not be eligible for an 80% unit. You would be under the income limit, but you may not make enough to support the rent. Now, if it turns out that after the lottery, then you submit all your income and asset documentation, and in fact you make $60,000, not $50,000 like you said, well, now all of a sudden you don't qualify for those 65% units. And so you lose your position on that waiting list. And then we'd have to figure out how to put you back in on the 80% list somewhere. Okay, but it may not and probably won't be right at the top. So particularly for this lottery, where we're going to enter you into the lottery based on what you put in your application, we're not going to independently verify it with documentation prior to the lottery. If you tell us you make $50,000 and we say, okay, you're eligible for a 65% unit, and you'll end up having a position on a lottery waiting list for one of those 65% units, but in fact you make $60,000, well, then there's going to have to be a reshuffling that happens, and you may not end up with as advantageous of a position as you may otherwise have had. So you just want to be very thoughtful about the number that you put for your income on your application. Now, that's the maximum income, okay? That's the program limit. That's what the program says. Hey, if you make more than this amount, you do not qualify for this program. You make too much money for this program. Now, there's also minimum incomes. Now, the minimum income is not a lottery program requirement, but as I said towards the beginning, households in this program are expected and required to be able to support the rent on the strength of their own income and assets. They have to be able to pay the rent each month, unless, or if they have a voucher that they can use, then that's okay too. And by the way, what I'm about to say does not apply if you have a voucher. So if you have a voucher, you can sort of ignore what I'm about to say. But if you don't, then minimum income is that is a requirement that is put in place by the leasing office, and they have that requirement whether you're an affordable applicant or a market rate applicant. And this is common for basically any building where you'd apply for a lease. When you apply for a lease, the leasing office wants to know how much money you make and what you have in the bank account, because they want to know that you're going to be able to pay the rent and you're not going to come up short in 3 months and then there's going to be an issue. So very common. And they use a rent to income ratio of about 3x. So they expect you to make about 3 times the rent in order to demonstrate that you make enough and will be able to support the rent. Now, again, assets can be included. So, if you don't make quite 3 times in income, but you've got, $50,000 in the bank that can be drawn down on to help support rent, that can be used to bump you up to the necessary threshold. So just to, again, there's a whole section on this in the information packet with a chart that shows what the different minimum income and asset levels would be for the different units. But just to give you a sense, for the 1-bedroom units, it's a little under 53,000 for the 65% units. And for the 80% units, it's a little over 62,000. For the 2-bedroom units at 80%, it's a little under 69,000. And for the 3-bedroom units, it's a little over 75,000. So again, that is the minimum income threshold using the rent to income ratio that the leasing office uses for all applicants, whether affordable or market rate. It's not a program requirement. It's a management team requirement to demonstrate that you have enough to be able to support the rent. Because it's not a program requirement, when we are doing the lottery screening, we are not going to implement. We are not going to take as thorough of a look at the minimum income as we do for maximum income. So what I mean by that is, if the income limit for a household size of 1 at 80% is $67,400, well then unfortunately, if you make 68,000, you're just barely over. We unfortunately have to say no. You have to draw the line somewhere. You'd be $600 over, and that would be close. But unfortunately, we'd have to say you make too much as a household size of 1. On the other hand, in terms of minimum incomes, if you're within a couple $100 or even a couple thousand, we'd probably say that's close enough for us. We're not going to screen you out on that basis. Now, so that's income. I should also mention, you do have to disclose what your various assets are. Like income, assets can be varied. So we've listed a bunch of what the common types of assets are in the application, and you should take a good look at that table and make sure you list all of those. Unlike income, there isn't an asset limit. So you could have 100,000, you could have 200,000, you could have $300,000 in the bank, whatever. That's not going to bump you over some limit because there isn't one. Now, the thing to note is as I said before, if you have assets that generate income, well, then that income gets added to your income limit. So that's really how assets become or kind of most important. There's no asset limit, but if your income generated from your assets puts you over the income limit, then that can trip some people up. But so again, take a good look at the asset table when you fill out the application. We're not interested in, just so you know, personal property, so you don't have to disclose if you have an antique collection of something, or jewelry, or your car, or whatever. Those don't count. But stocks, bonds, retirement accounts, savings accounts, checkings accounts, a home, those are the things that you would have to list. Okay. When you apply for, let me just see here. Okay, so when you apply for the lottery and you fill out your application, on one of the first pages, it will ask you, well, first of all, it'll ask you to circle or check off the bedroom sizes that you're interested in. So you can check off 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, or 3-bedroom. You don't have to say whether it's 80% or 65%. Don't worry about that. If you don't see it in the application, don't think that it's missing or that there was a mistake. You don't have to worry about that. All you are tasked with indicating is the bedroom size or sizes that you're interested in. So whether, one bedroom, 2 bedroom, or 3 bedroom. Now, you can check off more than one. You can check off all 3 of them. And there is absolutely no downside to checking off more. You will be entered into the lottery and have a position on the waiting list for every bedroom size that you're eligible for. So if you're eligible for 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms, you could be on 3 different waiting lists. And you don't prejudice your application or your waiting list position or do any kind of disservice to yourself by applying for more than 1 bedroom size if you think you might actually be interested. There's really no harm. On the other hand, if you say now, well, I'm really only interested in a 1 bedroom, and then we run the lottery and you say, actually, I wish I had applied for a 2 bedroom too. What can you do for me? We can't just put you on the 2 bedroom list in a high position. You're gonna, at best, be at the bottom of that list. So being over inclusive, definitely better than being under inclusive, because even if you list, hey, I want a 1 bedroom and a 2 bedroom, you get a spot on both lists. You get a better spot on the 2 bedroom list, and the leasing office says, hey, it's your turn to come in and apply for a 2 bedroom, and you say, hey, I've changed my mind. I actually only want a 1 bedroom. That's okay. So you just hold off, and now you're just waiting for a 1 bedroom. So over inclusive, better than under inclusive. Also, on one of the 3rd page of the application, you have to list your household type. And you might ask, kind of what's the reason for that? What does that mean? So what it means is the types correspond to the number of bedrooms that the program says that you would need. So here we have 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms. And therefore, the only type of household you can be is a type 1 household, a type 2 household, or a type 3 household. Type 3 household is a household who the program says needs 3 bedrooms. Type 2 household needs 2 bedrooms, and a type 1 household needs only 1 bedroom. We've listed out the various sort of compositions that can constitute a type 3, a type 2, or a type 1. So you just check the box that applies to your household. The importance of this is that for bigger units, so for the 3 bedroom units and the 2 bedroom units, the program requires that households who need all of the bedrooms be given priority over households who do not need all of the bedrooms. So what that means is that for the 1 3-bedroom unit, independent of how households are drawn in the lottery or anything else, I can tell you already that all type 3 households will have priority over all type 2 households for the 3-bedroom units. And that's because the program says we have to give type 3 households priority over type 2 households for the 3-bedroom units. And similarly, for the 2-bedroom units, type 3 and type 2 households would have equal priority, but they would both have priority over a type 1 household. So without even having done the lottery over a month in advance, I can already tell you that however many people are on the 2-bedroom list, the top households will all be type 3 and type 2, and the bottom households will all be type 1, because even though a type 1 household might like a 2-bedroom unit, the program says they don't need a 2-bedroom unit. Again, the different household types are listed in the application and the information packet, so I'm not going to spend the time now going through the different ways, the different compositions, because you can just, it's all pretty straightforward in the application. You just check off the box that applies to you. So if you're a 4-person household, you'll see a big box under type 3. You check that off, and on you go with the next part of the application. It's pretty self-explanatory, but if you have any issues, you can always get in touch with us. So anyway, make sure you get that one right, though, because, if you say you're a type 2 household, when in fact you really should be a type 3 household, you may not get the priority for a 3-bedroom unit that you actually should get. So just, take a minute to get that one right. Does an unborn child count towards the household size? Yes, it does. So, a married couple who's pregnant is a three-person household, and could check off the appropriate box on their household type. And you'd have to submit proof of pregnancy, but unborn child would count. Okay, so the kind of first step in all this, which we've been talking about, is, I've talked about the different eligibility requirements and stuff, but that's all towards submitting a lottery application and then the lottery. The next step after the lottery will be to move on to the leasing office to apply for a lease. And then if you're lease eligible and you are able to reserve a unit, you would then move on to the third and final step, which is to come back to SEB Housing to submit all of the income and asset documentation that you didn't have to submit when you submitted your application for the lottery, right? So remember, if you're interested, submit your lottery application before November 3rd. List all your income and assets and other information that the application requests. It's only 10 pages. Many of the boxes may not even be applicable to you. So hopefully it really shouldn't take too long to fill that out. When you submit your application, you'll get a response within, it should be a couple days. If there's anything missing or needs further clarification, we'll let you know. If you're ineligible, we'll let you know and why. If you are eligible, you get a lottery application number. This will be a letter that we'll send to you, and it'll have all the pertinent information that you need to have going forward. So that letter will, have all the people that you listed as the people who are going to be living in the unit with you. And I should say, think about this when you're applying, because you can't necessarily just kind of start swapping, mixing and matching household members later in the process. So typically the household that you tell us is going to be moving forward in this process is the household that needs to be moving forward in this process. In addition, on that letter, we'll list, the different bedroom sizes that you applied for, the bedroom sizes that you're eligible for, including the income tier, and you will also get a lottery application number. The lottery application number is an anonymous identifier to be used for purposes of the lottery and keeping your information private, but also being tied to you so we can kind of figure out who's where. Those numbers will be in the form of A.001, A.002, A.003, so on and so forth. Those numbers have absolutely no bearing on where you'll be in the lottery. They have no significance other than being anonymous. A.001, frankly, is just the first household to submit a eligible, complete application, but it doesn't mean that they're going to be first on a list or anything like that. When you get that letter, make sure to read it over. Make sure the details are right. If we said, hey, you applied for one bedroom and you're eligible and that's what you'll be moving forward with in the lottery, and you say, hey, wait a second, I actually applied for a two-bedroom too. Let us know. We need to fix that before the lottery. So please look at that letter that we send you closely. If there's anything that looks odd to you, that you don't understand, or that frankly isn't in line with what you thought the information you gave, then let us know. The lottery will be a couple weeks later on November 16th. Okay, so let's talk about the lottery. It'll be by way of YouTube and conference call, just like we're doing now, be at 6 p.m. And the way it is going to work is all of the lottery households numbers will be put in a box. I'll draw them out one by one. I'll hold them up to the screen so you can see them and call them out for households on the conference call. And then I'll be writing them down as I go to keep track of the order that they were called. Now, if you are sitting there watching, you may say, well, what does that mean? I got picked first. Does that mean I'm number one? And I got picked second. Does that mean I'm number two? Or who are the winners or who are the losers? None of those are accurate for this lottery for a number of reasons. One, there are no winners and losers. Everyone will be on a waiting list, and there will be a bunch of different waiting lists. Okay. Everyone will be on a waiting list for the unit types that they are eligible for. Okay. So let me just give an example. If you say, hey, I applied for a 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom, a 3-bedroom, and we say, hey, you're eligible for all of them at 80%. Okay, you make too much for the 65%, let's just say hypothetically, but you qualify for the 1, 2, and 3-bedroom at 80%, then you'll be on the 1-bedroom list, you'll be on the 2-bedroom list, and you'll be on the 3-bedroom list. Those lists will be different. They'll have different people on them. They will be organized differently. Okay? So there's no winners and losers. Everyone gets a waiting list position. The waiting list position will then dictate the order that households get to move on to step 2, which is applying for a lease with the leasing office. Okay? Additionally, you don't know exactly what the lottery drawing means in real time because you don't know who the other household numbers are, and you don't know the household bedroom sizes that they applied for, right? So if you're the 5th number picked in the lottery and you say, does that mean I'm number 5? The answer is we don't know in that moment because you don't know if the 4 households ahead of you applied for the same bedroom size as you. Maybe they didn't. Maybe you'll in fact be number 1 on the list because you applied for a 1-bedroom and the first 4 households only applied for 3 bedrooms. So you guys weren't even on the same list. Conversely, maybe you're a type 1 household and you throw your hat in the ring for a 2-bedroom unit and you're the very first household picked in the lottery and you say, hey, I'm number 1, I won. And I would say, well, I won't then, but no, because every household who applied for a 2-bedroom unit who's type 2 or type 3 is actually going to leapfrog over you, even though they were drawn after you. Those are those priorities that we talked about earlier. So by all means, if you want to watch the lottery, you are certainly welcome to, but really the kind of information that you can most use will come to you within a couple hours after the lottery, once I've had a chance to sort the results and make the different waiting lists. And I will send those waiting lists to all the households that were in the lottery. If you have email, I'll send it by email, one big BCC blast to everyone. And those waiting lists will be organized by all the different waiting lists, all the different lottery application numbers in order, top to bottom. And that is the order that households will be getting to move forward onto the next step. So that document, and again, it'll be a couple hours after the lottery, that's the one that you can really look at and say, okay, I'm number 5 on the 1-bedroom list and there are 5 units. Great. I know I'm getting a chance to move forward to the next step. Okay. Now, if you have a high number, does that automatically mean that you're going to get a unit? No, it doesn't, because 1, you still haven't applied for a lease, so you still have to go through that hoop. And households may be eligible for leases, but they may not be eligible for leases. And there could be various reasons for that. But just to give you a quick kind of rundown, when you apply for the lottery, we're not asking, if there's some, we're not doing a Corey check to see a criminal background that you might have. We're not looking at your credit to see if, what your credit score is. We're not taking landlord references. And I should pause for a sec. I don't know exactly what the management team's leasing criteria will be, but those are 3 pretty common ones, just for kind of illustrative purposes here. But, so you may be very well eligible for the lottery. You get a great waiting list position. You go to apply for a lease. You're thinking things are great. And the leasing office says, hey, I'm really sorry. Your credit just is not up to what we require. We can't move forward with you. That would really stink. That's unfortunate if that happens. That does happen. And so it's just important, in making your own arrangements, like don't tell your current landlord, hey, I got the number 1 position on the 1-bedroom waiting list. I'm moving out in a month. I'm definitely getting a unit at Watermills, because you're not there yet. Okay, you're not there yet. So don't give notice prematurely or make plans prematurely. So you have to apply and be eligible for a lease. If you are eligible for a lease, great. but you're still not there yet, because then you have to go on to step 3, which is to submit all of the income and asset documentation with SEB housing. Oh, and at this point, I should go back for a second. So I was just talking a moment ago about the lottery application numbers that we'll send to you if and when you submit a complete and eligible, or complete application that shows that you're eligible, right? So we'll send you that letter with your number and what units you applied for and all the people in your household, etc. But we will also send you a document requirements guide. That guide will tell you in painstaking and excruciating detail all of the types of documents that you will need to have ready if you are later on in the process, if you have a high waiting list position and are lease or lease eligible, right? Or I guess I should say, if you demonstrate that you're lease eligible and you reserve a unit, and now you're moving on to step 3, and you have to provide all the documentation to SEB, this documents requirements guide is going to provide you a roadmap of what we will then require for that 3rd step. So when you get that lottery eligibility letter with the number and all that other information and the documents requirements guide, it may be in your very best interest to start collecting some of those documents, so that if you do get a high waiting list position and you do show that you're lease eligible and you do reserve a unit and now you're moving on to step 3, you have a lot of those documents ready to go. Maybe you have all of them just about ready to go, because there's going to be a time limit to complete the process with us. And that's just to be fair to everyone, right? I mean, if you reserve a unit, it wouldn't be fair to all the people behind you, or the leasing office, frankly, if you then took the next 5 months to complete your program application with us. They want to get the units rented, other households want to know. So you're only going to have about 10 days to get that done with us. So it'd be a shame if you were in the lottery and did move forward and were lease eligible and you had a unit and now you're excited and they say, okay, now you got to complete the process with SEB. Then you say, oh, darn, I haven't collected any of the documentation and now I'm having trouble getting it and all this other stuff. And then you miss the deadlines. You don't submit, complete program application with us. And then you lose your reservation. That would really stink. So, start to put a file together, or I would recommend, you make your own choice, but I would recommend that when you get that lottery letter, start building your file so that if you do get a chance to move forward, you've got that all ready and it doesn't become a huge issue at that time. Now, I should also say that, just going back a sec again here to the lottery and the waiting list, if you don't have a very, very top spot, that is not reason to think that you are definitely not going to move forward, because there could be a number of different reasons why households ahead of you on the waiting list don't end up leasing a unit. Maybe they're not lease eligible. Maybe they change their mind. Maybe they move out of state. Maybe they were in a lottery at a different development. Maybe they're not program eligible. They submit all their documentation and we find out they make $150,000 a year. They said they made 80 on their application, but that was wildly inaccurate. So there are many reasons why households who have high waiting list positions and are eligible may end up actually not renting a unit. And in fact, I would say on average, leasing offices have to screen about 3 people to fill every 1 unit. So what that means is if you don't have one of those super high positions on a waiting list, just sit tight, because your number may very well come up. It may very well come up. You may not be in the first batch of people who are invited to move forward to the leasing office to apply for a lease. But maybe 2 weeks down the road, you get a call from them and say, hey, 3 of the households ahead of you have, not worked out for one reason or another, or they passed and now your turn is up. So come on in and, apply for a lease. So anyway, just keep that in mind, if you don't have one of those super high positions on the waiting list. Now, when you do move forward to that next step in applying for a lease, like I said, there'll be different waiting lists. The leasing office will be inviting households from the different lists, and you will, if you're lease eligible, you'll be able to reserve any of the available units from that list, right? So like I said towards the beginning, there are 5 one-bed, just giving an example here. There are 5 one-bedroom units that are available to households making up to 65% of the area median income. So one of those units is disabled accessible. That'll have its own separate waiting list. Okay, so there'll be 4 that are not disabled accessible. If you are on that list for one of those 4 units and you're the first on that list, then you'll be able to reserve any of the 4. Then you come to SEB, that unit is temporarily off the market. The next household will be able to reserve from any of the 3 that remain. Then they come to us. The next household will be able to reserve from any of the 2 that remain. And then next, the 1 that remains. Okay? So you will have some agency, you will have some choice in the unit that you want, depending on where you are on the waiting list. And oftentimes units aren't all delivered at exactly the same time. So, if you're number 1 on the 1-bedroom 65% AMI list, you may say, hey, I actually, I want the unit that's going to be ready in a month from now, or I don't know exactly what the, span of delivery dates are, but it's usually pretty rare for all units to be ready at exactly the same time. So, if you look at your schedule and say, hey, I know this unit's ready today, but I actually want the one that's ready in a month, then you reserve the one that's ready in a month. Okay. So I've gotten through the lottery, different waiting lists. Then you move on to step 2, which is to apply for a lease with the leasing office. If you're eligible, you reserve from any of the units that are still available from your list. Okay, from your list. Then you go to step 3, which is the final step, which is to complete the program application with SEB Housing. Hopefully you already have your file built and ready to go, so that process is easy. And once we say okay, you can then go forward in signing a lease and setting a move-in date. So that's kind of the process in broad strokes. I should say, just kind of going to move forward here now. In this program, you have to recertify as eligible each year. So if you rent a unit, a year from now, you have to recertify, showing that you're still eligible for the program. I know that elicits a bit of a exhale from a lot of people, but it's not that bad. You can understand the rationale behind it. These are affordable units. They're income restricted. So, if a household was eligible in year 1 because they made $60,000 and then they came into a small fortune and now they got $1 million, then this is not the right opportunity for them. It should go to households that are, more in need. The good news is if you're recertifying, you've already been through the process, so you know kind of what it entails. Some of your documentation may already be on file and potentially could be used again. So perhaps some of the amount of documentation may be a little less. Additionally, the recertification income limit goes up substantially. So just to give you an example, and again, this is in the info packet, household size of 1 to be eligible for an 80% AMI unit can make up to $67,400. In 1 year from now, assuming no change to the area median incomes, and that's probably not accurate, but it's enough to give you an idea of how this works. In 1 year from now, that same household would be able to make up to $94,360 and still be eligible, right? So year 1, you want to qualify for the program, you got to be under $67,400. But in year 2, when you're recertifying, now you can make up to about $94,360. So almost a $30,000 cushion. You'd still be eligible for the program. If your boss at work wants to give you a little raise, as long as it's not too big of a raise, you can accept that and you'd still be eligible upon recertification. Should also note that as rents are tied to the area median incomes and area median incomes change each year, rents typically change once a year. They can't change in the middle of a lease. And you would need to be given notice of any rent changes. Rents can go up a little bit. It's usually not a huge amount. Kind of depends on the HUD published numbers. In theory, they can also go down depending on the HUD numbers. No idea what those may be in 2021, 2022 and beyond, but just something to keep in mind, that those rents typically change once a year, but you would be given notice about changes ahead of time. So, been talking for 55 minutes. I think that's a pretty good, I hope, synopsis of what this opportunity is. Are there any questions from anyone that I can answer? As I said, if you don't know your question now, but you think of it later, that's A-okay. You can always reach out to us. You can email us. You can call us. You can even fax us if you want to. But we're around to help you through this process, and we will be around all the way up through the lottery, and after the lottery, we will be involved. So any questions, anything that I can elaborate on, or hopefully this was gives you some sense of this process and is informative. Hope you're interested. If you are, hope you apply, and we look forward to getting your application. Doesn't look like anyone's got any questions, so in that case, I will wrap this up. But thank you all for attending, and I hope everyone has a great night.
Thank you.
You got it. Take care.